The NoSQL ERROS connections database for IBM I allows application development without software development. ERROS enables rapid incremental development of enterprise-level applications, mostly without a single line of new program code, even for major applications. ERROS data and application definitions are stored in the ERROS ontology, which is part of the NoSQL ERROS connections database. Data and applications are not defined in program code. ERROS application development is done incrementally. You can grow as you go, without an upfront detailed specification, without physical file design, and mostly without any program change or recompilation. No new files are created when new entity types are defined. All metadata and user data are stored in the ERROS connections database. New applications do not require changes to SOI or to the ERROS database handler. Applications can be enhanced as user requirements evolve. All ERROS applications can handle billions of records with very rapid response times. The ERROS connections database was designed from the beginning to handle big data. ERROS has its own unique Graphical Standard Operating Interface, SOI. SOI generates HTML and JavaScript on the fly at runtime. There is no stored HTML. SOI is used for both ERROS application development and for operating the ERROS applications created, which can be developed and which work immediately over the Internet. SOI was designed to reduce keystrokes, complex syntax, and the use of the mouse to the minimum. Practicality was considered much more important than looks. SOI has evolved from considerable practical use. This video shows how users make requests using SOI and how SOI responds. When you have signed on to ERROS, SOI will display a list of the ERROS applications to which you are authorized. Double-click on Corporate Organizer 2. SOI will display the initial menu for the application. Towards the top of the screen, SOI displays the name of the application being operated, in this case Corporate Organizer 2, the name of the operator, and the name of the company that employs the operator. Double-click on Contacts. SOI displays the initial menu for contacts. Double-click on User Person and Business Name, all contacts. SOI shows, above the main input box, that you now have access to the entity type User Person and Business Name, all contacts, and that records are identified by name and/or number. This entity type contains contact names for all people, businesses, and institutions. Let's assume you wish to call someone with the last name Bach, B-A-C-H, or send an email if there is no response. Type Bach, B-A-C-H, in upper or lowercase and press or click on Enter. SOI will instruct the ERROS database handler to look for any record in the list of contacts whose last name is Bach. Unlike document and graph databases, no special syntax is required. And since SOI tells you above the main input box that you're in the entity type User Person and Business Name, all contacts, you don't have to specify the entity type with each request, unless you wish to look in another entity type. SOI displays 6 records. The first is a record for the imaginary British Association of Connectionist Hosts, as their acronym BARC has been created as a synonym. This is followed by all people in the database whose last name is Bach, together with basic information about them and about their employer where this is known. This display shows how SOI is able to handle variable amounts of data. If you were using a document or graph database, your request would be rather more complex. If you were using Cypher as a query language to retrieve data in a graph database, every request would have to include the terms match and return and much more. This is not necessary with SOI. Cipher requires many more keystrokes, taking much longer and with higher risk of error. If the person whom you wish to call is in the list, perhaps Johann Sebastian Bach, click on the telephone icon to the right of his number, or, if you wish to call him at work, click on the telephone icon to the right of his employer's telephone number. SOI will immediately start your VoIP application to call Johann Sebastian Bach. As this is a demo, there won't be a response, so cancel the call. To send him an email, click on his email address. SOI will immediately start your email system and open a new email with Bach's email address. Once again, as this is a demo, the email address is imaginary, so cancel the email. All the attributes highlighted by SOI are clickable. The view of the data displayed by SOI for each entity type is defined in the ERROS ontology for the ERROS application Corporate Organizer 2. To make the data easier to read, attribute names are not displayed where it is obvious what they are. Where there is no data in an attribute, nothing is displayed. This can be changed. In the ERROS connections database, all relationships are automatically bidirectional. In graph databases, you have to create two separate relationships. Contact databases do not always have data in every attribute, so this approach makes the records easier to read. In, say, a stock control system, most attributes would have data, so SOI could display regular fixed column tables with column headings. In the connections database, every attribute value is stored as a separate record. As can be seen, SOI can concatenate the data in multiple attributes so that they are displayed on the same line. A new line can be started where this makes the data easier to read. This is chosen here for employers, where known. The data about each employer is not stored in the record for each employee, but retrieved automatically from the record of the employer. There is no redundant data in ERROS applications. Note that addresses can be displayed with post or zip code, first or last. If you double-click on the telephone number of Anna Bach, not on the telephone icon, SOI will instruct the database handler to navigate to the entity type user telephone number and retrieve there the number that you have just clicked on. SOI will display a list of people or businesses that use that telephone number, in this case Anna Bach and Johann Sebastian Bach. SOI also displays their postal and email addresses if known. J.S. Bach's address has not been recorded, but given that they share the same telephone number, you might speculate that they live at the same address. Double-click on Johann Sebastian Bach. ERROS will display initial data about J.S. Bach, the same as when all Bachs were displayed. So far, the search for Bach has been in the All Contacts table. You might wish to restrict your search to people only. Type *I or *individual and press Enter. SOI shows above the main input box that you are now in the entity type individual. Type Bach and press Enter. ERROS shows the data for all people whose last name is Bach. This is exactly the same as the data shown in your original request for Bach, but the British Association of Connectionist Hosts is not retrieved as it is not a person. J.S. Bach's employer is Connections, so double-click on that. You will see that ERROS is taking you back to the entity type user person's business name and retrieve the record for Connections, including the names of all recorded employees. If you double-click on the name of J.S. Bach, you will go round in a circle. You could double-click on the name of one of the other employees, but don't do this as I wish to show you an alternative view of the data. Each entity type in an ERROS application can have an almost unlimited number of attributes. The attributes of user, person, and business name displayed by SOI in all of the above requests were chosen by the developer of Corporate Organizer 2 and stored in the initial menu for user, person, and business name, thus defining the initial view of the data. However, not all attributes were put in this view. You can request an alternative view of the data by using a simple query. In this case, the attributes are defined in the query menu. If you type a name such as Bark, SOI will instruct the ERROS database handler to use the attribute definition stored in the initial menu. However, if you follow the name with a / and the name of an attribute, the database handler will use the view of data defined in the query menu for user, person, and business name. For instance, type ARNE, ARNE, /TEL */ and press Enter. What this means is, look for a record of the last name ARNE, then access an attribute which has a name beginning TEL, and then access any data stored in that attribute. SOI displays Dr. Arne's name and telephone number. As before, the attribute names are not displayed, as it is obvious what the data is. Perhaps you want Dr. Arne's telephone number and also email address. Type ARNE, ARNE, /TEL !AND email / and press Enter. It should store in that, and then return to the list of attributes, access an attribute email, and then access the data in that. SOI displays Dr. Arne's name, telephone number, and email address. The attribute names can be entered in any sequence. Because all metadata is stored in the ERROS connections database, and this has a 17-part key field, the attribute names are indexed in the same way as all user data records. And these queries are executed at very high speed, even if there are many millions of records in the database. You can make a counter request by typing !C =, followed by a record identifier. If you type !C =, Bark, BACH, SOI will tell you that there are 6 records. Type Bark again and press Enter to return to the list of Bark records. These records are displayed in the sequence of last name, first names. To the right of each Bark's name is an ID number in the entity type user, person, and business name. You will see that the records are not in number sequence. Type #=40 and click on Enter. SOI will display all records from ID number 40 in number sequence. Records for connections, ontologies, and British Association of Connectionist hosts are displayed as they have higher numbers. If there were more records, SOI will display up to 10 and tell you that there were more. To display all contacts from the beginning in number sequence, type # and press Enter. SOI will display the first 10 records added to the entity type. Many of these have connections to records added later. Note that, to the left, above the first record, it says in the green button, Enter for more. To see further records, simply press the Enter key. You don't have to touch the mouse. You can access records within a range of names. Type handle, HANDEL, !TO, Purcell, PURCELL, and press Enter. SOI displays the first 10 records. The green button at the top left indicates that there are further records, and you can access these without using the mouse by pressing the Enter key. SOI displays the remaining records. You would now like to add a record for Bert Bacharach. Type Bacharach, Bert. The comma separates last names from first names. Press Enter. SOI informs you that there is no such record and tells you to click on the Add button. You could do this or press F9 or insert the command !ADD space ahead of the name, but pressing F9 is simplest. SOI displays a form that recognizes that Bacharach is his last name and that Bert is his first name, and allows you to enter his name type. Optionally, you can add his titles, qualifications, and also nickname in correspondence greeting. Type M, i.e. male, for name type and press Enter. SOI then prompts you to add an optional short comment about Bert Bacharach, but press Enter. The database handler adds the new name. As ERROS applications are persistent, all database changes are immediately committed to disk. Because you have just added a new record, SOI then displays the first 10 in a list of attributes in which you can store data about Bert Bacharach. Note that there can be spaces between the words that make up the attribute names. Let's assume that you met him at a conference, would like to contact him, but didn't take his contact details. Double-click on Initial Note. SOI automatically opens a box in which you can type text. Add a short note, and then click on Confirm at the bottom of the box. The database handler will add the text note and return to the list of attributes, starting with the next attribute after the one that you previously selected. You don't have his contact details, but remember that he worked for Borstal Aggregates, so double-click on Employer. SOI prompts you to select Business or Miscellaneous Name. Double-click on Business. Hoping that Borstal Aggregates is already in your company's contact database, type BOAR* and press Enter. SOI displays a record for Borstal Aggregates. Double-click on that record. SOI shows that you are about to create a connection between Bert Bacharach, his name is towards the top of the screen, and Borstal Aggregates. Press Enter. SOI prompts you to enter an optional comment about the connection. Press Enter. SOI shows that Bert Bacharach is an individual whose employer is Borstal Aggregates. If you knew that Bert Bacharach had a second employer, you could add it here. If you press Enter, ERROS will return to the list of attributes so that you can add further data about Bert Bacharach. However, double-click on Borstal Aggregates. SOI displays data about Borstal Aggregates. This includes a list of their employees recorded in your database. Because all connections in ERROS are bidirectional, Bert Bacharach is in the list and in correct alphabetic sequence of last name, first name. The note that you entered about him is displayed alongside his name. This is not stored under Borstal Aggregates, but retrieved from Bert Bacharach's record. Click twice on Previous at top of screen. SOI displays a list of attributes from the attribute after the one that you last accessed. To re-access that, you could click on Refresh or type EMPLO* and press Enter. As you have no further data, type *I and press Enter. SOI shows that you now have access to the entity type individual. Type BACH* and press Enter. SOI shows that Bert Bacharach's name has been added in correct alphabetic sequence to the entity type individual. This was done automatically after you entered M as his name type. Bert Bacharach now belongs to two entity types, user, personal and business name, and individual. Bacharach's employer's name and their switchboard telephone number and website name are displayed together with your note. If you wish to call Borstal aggregates, click on the telephone icon to the right of their telephone number. Let's return to the list of all records whose last name begins with Bach. Type *n and press Enter. Type BACH asterisk and press Enter. SOI shows that Burt Bacharach is in correct alphabetic sequence. If you had typed BACHA asterisk, SOI would only have displayed the record that you have just added. If you want just the British Association of Connections hosts, you could type the first part of its full name. It would be much quicker to type equals BACH, and SOI would only display that record. If you want all the Bachs apart from that one, you can type BACH space greater than sign. This means look for Bach records that have a first name, i.e. that is greater than blank. If you typed greater than sign BACH, then SOI would display the first 10 records after the Bachs, beginning with Burt Bacharach. If you wish to reduce the number of records retrieved, you can follow a last name with one or more first names. Type Bach, Johann, SEB asterisk and press Enter. SOI displays the record for Johann Sebastian Bach. Click on ERROS Apps at the top of the screen or type 3 full stops and press Enter. SOI redisplays the list of ERROS applications to which you are authorized. Double-click on Stock Level Adjustment. SOI shows that you now have access to the entity type product, and that products are identified by both product name and product number. If you were looking for a particular product number, you could type #NNNNN, where NNNNN is the product number. However, you can type asterisk or #asterisk to display the first 10 records in either name or number sequence. SOI displays the records in columns with headings, demonstrating the flexibility of SOI. Each line displays 2 records. The first contains the product name and number, and the second stores the stock details. The colors of the various elements on the screen are defined in the connections database for each ERROS licensee, in this case ERROS Demo. There can be multiple definitions, with the first one becoming the default. Users can change the color set that they are using. To do this, click on the Operate button at the top of the screen. Double-click on Browser Defaults 1. Color set number 1 is currently in use as the default. Type the number of the color set to be used now, 3, and press Enter. The screen colors will change instantly. Click on the Jump Back button at the top of the screen.